I just finished the season finale of the final season of Castlevania. Feels great. Been playing tons of Destiny. Honestly, I'm in a positive vibe right now. I don't think that there's anything that could. What is. I will write the session on how I want you guys to act. If you don't want to do those things, then tough luck. Man, that's not just a novice DM. That's a dick. Hey everyone, fair warning, this one has an NSFW tag on it. Hello everyone, this is my first time posting here. Hopefully this will prove to be a cautionary and informative tale. This was a 5e game a few years back. I had been the group's DM, but I had recently lost my job and had been living out of my car for a while, so another player decided to take up the reins while I got my life back together. Out of respect for everyone's privacy, I'll just assign all involved monikers. The other players can go by Charm, Clueless, Confrontation, and Edge. Oh my god, a non-confusing naming scheme. Thank you, OP. Seriously. Anyway, Edge was the player who decided to take over for me. He came up with this wonderful idea of a Sky Island adventure. We were all on board, and he even said he would give us an extra boon. Our tiefling bard, played by Charm, received free wings. Our half-orc paladin, played by Confrontation, received the ability to summon flying mounts at level 1. Edge and Confrontation were besties, by the way. Clueless gained flight for his dragonborn paladin, and my half-elven cleric of Saloon could turn into a werebear. At first, I was like, okay, Saloon's a goddess of the moon, so it's not the craziest idea for a cleric of hers to be a werebear, but it didn't stop there. My half-elf cleric was male, but a Bishonen who has an upbeat and supportive personality. At least, that's how I envisioned him. He grew up in an orphanage, and the caretaker was essentially my surrogate mother. Almost immediately, Edge began pushing the Blood Hunter class on me, telling me how my father had abandoned me after my mother was brutally killed by vampires, and how it filled me with a fanatical hatred of vampires, and how bitter and vengeful my character was. Also, he wanted to make my character as hyper-masculine as possible, which once again went against the Bishonen personality that I was going for with this character. Now, I had no idea with the dead mother and the deadbeat dad, but I was not going to transform my character into a vengeance-filled edgelord. I wanted my cleric to live life one day at a time and not become obsessed with a blood feud with vampires. Edge was a big fan of the underworld movies and lycanthropes in general, along with being a furry himself. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing wrong with that in of itself, but the problems began when he began pushing a few things that he personally enjoyed onto my character, and more on that later. For the record, I have nothing against Blood Hunter as a class, it just didn't fit my character. Fast forward a few sessions, we were finally off the main island and traveling around, with the DM still trying to force the underworld storyline upon me after I told him that it didn't fit my character. I would fight vampires, but I wasn't going to be a vengeance-filled edgelord about it. This led to my first werebear transformation, which occurred during the middle of battle. As I began to transform, Edge informed me that a bloodthirsty rage overtook me as I was filled with hatred and fury over my dead mother, who I had never met nor had any memory of. My epic one-liner in a deep voice was, "Today's the day that teddy bears have their picnic." What the? Never mind. Anyway, now to be fair, that song is low-key terrifying when you look at the implication of the lyrics, but at that point it was enough to completely take the wind out of Edgelord's sails. After the battle, I tried to turn back, but he informed me that my werebear form was now my default form, and that I couldn't turn back into a half-elf. My response to this, while somewhat juvenile, was to make the most groan-worthy bear puns whenever possible. It was unbearable! When I wasn't in hybrid form, he would have me randomly get trapped in full bear form. During one session, when Charm wasn't around, and it was just me, Edge, Confrontation, and Clueless, Edge decided that what my character needed was some romance, and this is where he tried to force a specific fetish of his onto me and my character. Why? Why do people do things like this? Anyway, venture forth. What this actually entailed was him telling me that while I was in bear form, I was sexually attracted to a female bear and wanted to reproduce with her. Naturally, I put my foot down and said no. He insisted on saying that my animal instincts had taken over, and it was only natural that my character would want to have sex with this bear. And I still put my foot down, saying I will not have sex with this bear. Now, take this and combine it with my puns and refusal to be an extra from the Underworld franchise, and all of this really ticked the DM off, and I'm pretty sure he just decided that my character had to go. Eventually, we got to our next island, after I was finally able to get back to my half-elf form for an island that was controlled by a group of evil fae that were trying to get it to fall out of the sky. Of course, naturally, not a single creature we fought actually had the fae type, or any type that could be affected by my protection from good and evil, and they always seemed to target me. There was an island guardian, which was a fae/celestial/undead combo that counted as none of those things. There were the monstrous satyrs, the phase spiders, and of course the Kate Bolepas, I don't know what that is, one of which tried to kill Charm's tiefling after he had flown onto his back by mooring his neck at 180 degrees backwards, which should have broken the creature's neck. Charm had also rebelled against Edge in his attempts to make his backstory and character as edgy as possible. Eventually, things came to a head during our battle with a giant Stonehenge golem. It had a challenge rating way outside of our level range, with the only way to defeat him being a puzzle we had received no clue or forewarning about, or even had a chance to activate before this thing attacked. So even while Clueless and Confrontation, the paladins, were whacking at it, and Charm was doing his best to figure out what was ultimately a relatively simple elemental puzzle, my poor half-elf life cleric was drawing aggro on this death machine, going full defense with Shield of Faith up just to survive, as it continued to ignore the paladins that were actively trying to stop it. When I wasn't fighting for my life, I was launching guiding bolts, which naturally did absolutely nothing. Eventually, Clueless and Confrontation decided to help Charm finish the puzzle off, and I was saved, much to the annoyance of the DM. The campaign fell apart not too long after, as Edge didn't want to do it anymore, and despite my better judgment, I decided to run a Starfinder game as my life was beginning to pull itself back together. Eventually, Edge and Confrontation had a vicious and very ugly falling out, and the group was disbanded. Confrontation and I were never that close, and Edge just disappeared into the void. I also have no idea what happened to Clueless. Charm and I went on to form a new group, which, small as it is, isn't nearly as dysfunctional. As a rule for my new players and group, I make sure I know what they're comfortable with and promise them I won't force anything onto their characters that they don't want. Remember, friends, it's all about communication and respect. Absolute agree on that point. Always establish what kind of content is going to be included in your game, especially what kind of NSFW content is going to be included in your game, if there's going to be NSFW content in your game. And obviously, people are going to have different levels of tolerance. People are going to be okay with different things, and that is okay. Do not force players to go through something they do not want to go through. It is quite simple. Boundaries and respect are a big part of making a D&D game good. If you don't respect boundaries, the campaign will fall apart. Any social situation will fall apart. We have talked about that before, but it is worth reiterating. It is very, very important. Now, something we haven't talked about before is DMs controlling character creation. Now, when you're talking to new players, I do recommend that DMs assist them with character creation, but always let the player build out the vision of what the character is. This player clearly had a vision, and they definitely weren't new as far as I'm concerned, so the DM had no excuse to do what he did. Never, ever, 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 ever try to control a player's vision for their character. Unless the vision is inappropriate or you don't want it at the table for some reason, then you shouldn't be trying to shut down their ideas for their own character. Coming up with a character and getting attached to them is one of the best parts of D&D, and stripping that from a player is just not okay in my book. This is definitely one of the worst DMs we've had up here. In short, let your characters build their visions and make sure to not cross boundaries. If you do that, you're on your way to having a good D&D game. That is all I have to say for that. If you enjoyed this episode of RPG Horror Stories and you want to let me know, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more episodes of this series as well as my other content, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.